All right, boys and girls, time for reading and Little House. So we want our books. We want our vocab paper. And as we read, we're going to look for the word stealthy in chapter 3, which is Camp on the High Prairie. And then we're also going to do a diary entry. In this case, we're going to be taking perspective. We are going to put ourselves in the place of one of the main characters. So as you read, think about what Ma is seeing and thinking and feeling, or Laura, what she is thinking and feeling and seeing, or Pa, or I don't know, Mary and Carrie aren't mentioned much in this chapter, so it'd probably be kind of hard to write about them. So I think I would stick with Ma or Pa or Laura. And you're going to write a diary entry where you're going to tell me what they are thinking and feeling about things that happened in the chapter. It's really fun if you can write what they would say using words you've thought of that they could say. Like Laura could say, I saw the grasses, and things like that. So that would be kind of cool. That would be really, really, really great if you can put yourself in that place. Before we read the chapter, I want to talk about a option I have on Seesaw. When you put something, when you send something to me, I can either approve it, I can throw it in the bin, which I do if you send me like empty things or all it has on it is a scribble. I don't approve most of those. I'm not seeing those anymore, but I was seeing those at the beginning. And then there's a third thing I can do called send back. Now that we are doing a few more writing activities with Little House, there's some more coming up that you're going to have to share with me. I'm going to use that option. So if you don't send me you reading what you wrote and putting yourself in someone else's place and telling about what you were surprised by or what you thought as things happened to you in the chapter, or you just tell me, well, I don't know. I just don't know. I don't have any opinions. Then I'm going to send it back and you're going to do it again. Because this is graded. And if we did it at school, I would expect you to do it. I know I'm not there to help you with it, but Mom and Dad are. And most of you, this is a fun activity, but you can't just send me nothing. All right, let's get to the chapter. So we're looking for the word stealthy, and we're thinking about what they see and how they're feeling in this chapter about the surprises that happen. Camp on the High Prairie. Page 24, 28, and 29 is where we're going to start. This is not a super long chapter. We left off in a very exciting chapter, so I'm sorry it's been a few days. And I bet some of you probably read ahead just to see, because, it's hard to leave off when it's super exciting. Pa made camp as usual. First he unhitched and unharnessed Pet and Patty, and he put them on their picket lines. Picket lines were long ropes fastened to iron pegs driven into the ground. The pegs were called picket pins. When horses were on picket lines, they could eat all the grass that the long ropes would let them reach. But when Pet and Patty were put on them, the first thing they did was to lie down and roll back and forth and over. They rolled till the feeling of the harness was all gone from their backs. While Pet and Patty were rolling, Pa pulled all the grass from a large round space of ground. There was old dead grass at the roots of the green grass, and Pa would take no chance of setting the prairie on fire. If fire once started in that dry undergrass, it would sweep the whole country bare and black. Pa said, best to be on the safe side. It saves trouble in the end. When the space was clear of grass, Pa laid a handful of dry grass in its center. From the creek bottoms, he brought an armful of twigs and dead wood. Remember, creek bottoms are the land that's low down right by the water, and that's where the trees are on both sides. So he has to go there to not only get water, but to get any kind of wood. So he usually has to haul things for, depending on how close they camped, it could be up to a mile or more away, which is a long ways to go. I think either on foot or by wagon, but a lot of times if it was just a camp, the man would have gone on foot. And picket lines, if you look carefully at the top of the page, you can kind of see one in between the horses, especially by the horse that's standing up. You can see the long rope and where it goes into the ground. He laid small twigs and larger twigs and then the wood on the handful of dry grass, and he lighted the grass. The grass crackled merrily inside the ring of bare ground, but that it couldn't get out of. Then Pa brought water from the creek while Mary and Laura helped Ma get supper. Ma measured coffee beans into the coffee mill and Mary ground them. Laura filled the coffee pot with the water Pa brought, and Ma set the pot in the coals. She set the iron bake oven in the coals too. So they just put the pot right down there. If you've ever been camping, people do that. They have cast iron pots and pans with lids that you just kind of put in the coals and things bake in there. While it heated, she mixed cornmeal and salt with water and patted it into little cakes. So she's making kind of like a fried cornmeal cake. I don't know if you've ever had fried cornmeal. It's still something eaten pretty commonly in the southern part of the United States, but not where we are at. A lot of people say, oh, well, the corn cakes were like cornbread. Yes and no. Cornbread has sugar and flour in it and milk and to make it rise up. And these didn't. It had salt to flavor the cornmeal and water to kind of make it into a batter-ish. And it formed like a little cake. So a piece of cornbread, rises up and it looks really good. And you put butter on it, or you put on honey or jelly. And these were corn cakes, and they would look like just like a little flat cake that they fried on either side. It tastes good, but it's not like as good as cornbread. But pioneers had a lot of just food they had to eat to survive, and it wasn't necessarily eaten because it tasted good, but because it had nutrients in it and kept you alive. She greased the bake oven with a pork rind, and pork rind is the fatty part on the outside of the bacon. Laid the corn cakes in it and put on the cover, so she's frying them up in there. Then Pa raked more coals over the cover, so it'll bake on top and the bottom, while Ma sliced fat salt pork, which is really thick cut bacon. She fried the slices in the iron spider. The spider had short legs to stand on in the coals, and that was why it was called a spider. If it had no legs, it would have been only a frying pan. And I'll show you a picture of a spider here in my Pioneer Dictionary. And it has lots of pictures in it of things that Pioneer people use. So we'll use it throughout the book whenever we need to, whenever I need to show you something. So this is a spider. If I can get it up close enough to you, you can see it. So it looks like a cast iron skillet with a handle and legs. And it stood in the coals on a campfire, and you could fry stuff in it. Why it's called a spider, I don't know, because it doesn't have 8 legs, and to me it doesn't look like a spider, but maybe they thought it did. The coffee boiled, the cakes baked, the meat fried, and they all smelled so good that Laura grew hungrier and hungrier. Pa set the wagon seat near the fire. He and Ma sat on it. Mary and Laura sat on the wagon tongue. Each of them had a tin plate and a steel knife and a steel fork with white bone handles. Ma had a tin cup, and Pa had a tin cup, and baby Carrie had a little one all her own. But Mary and Laura had to share their tin cup. They drank water. They could not drink coffee until they grew up. While they were eating supper, the purple shadows closed around the campfire. The vast prairie was dark and still. Only the wind moved stealthily through the grass, and the large low stars hung glittering from the great sky. The campfire was cozy in the big chill darkness. The slices of pork were crisp and fat. The corn cakes were good. In the dark beyond the wagon, Pet and Patty were eating too. They bit off bites of grass with sharp, crunching sounds. "We'll camp here a day or two," said Pa. "Maybe we'll stay here. There's good land, timber in the bottoms, plenty of game, everything a man could want. What do you say, Caroline?" "Well, we might go farther and fare worse," Ma replied. "Anyways, I'll take a look around tomorrow," Pa said. "I'll take my gun and get some good, fresh meat." Because eating heavily salted bacon was, like I said, nutrients, but not necessarily so good and tasty. So if he could go get like a prairie chicken, that would have tasted a lot better. He lighted his pipe with a hot coal and stretched out his legs comfortably. The warm brown smell of tobacco smoke mixed with the warmth of the fire. Mary yawned and slid off the wagon tongue to sit on the grass. Laura yawned too. Ma quickly washed the tin plates, the tin cups, the knives and forks. She washed the bake oven and the spider and rinsed the dishcloth. For an instant she was still, listening to the long wailing howl from the dark prairie. They all knew what it was. But that sound always ran cold up Laura's backbone and crinkled over the back of her head. Ma shook the dishcloth, and then she walked into the dark and spread the cloth on the tall grass to dry. When she came back, Pa said, "Wolves, half a mile away, I'd judge." "Well, where there's deer, there will be wolves." "I wish—" He didn't say what he wished, but Laura knew. He wished Jack was there. When wolves howled in the big woods, Laura had always known that Jack would not let them hurt her. A lump swelled hard in her throat, and her nose smarted. She winked fast and did not cry. That wolf, or perhaps another wolf, howled again. "Bedtime for little girls," Ma said cheerfully. Mary got up and turned around so that Ma could unbutton her. But Laura jumped up and stood still. She saw something. Deep in the dark beyond the firelight, two green lights were shining near the ground. They were eyes. Oh no. Cold ran up Laura's backbone. Her scalp crinkled. Her hair stood up. The green lights moved. One winked out. Then the other winked out. Then both shone steadily, coming near. "Look, Pa, look," Laura said. "A wolf!" Pa did not seem to move quickly, but he did. In an instant he took his gun out of the wagon and was ready to fire at those green eyes. The eyes stopped coming. They were still in the dark, looking at him. "It can't be a wolf, unless it's a mad wolf," Pa said. Ma lifted Mary into the wagon. "And it's not that," said Pa. "Listen to the horses." Pet and Patty were still biting off bits of grass. If it had been a real wolf, the horses would have been really scared and upset. They would have been making lots of noises, and they seemed to be like, "Nothing's wrong." "A lynx," said Ma, "or a coyote?" Pa picked up a stick of wood. He shouted and threw it. The green eyes went close to the ground as if the animal crouched to spring. Pa held the gun ready. The creature did not move. "Don't, Charles," Ma said. But Pa slowly walked toward those eyes, and slowly along the ground the eyes crawled toward him. Laura could see the animal in the edge of the dark. It was a tawny animal and brindled. Then Pa shouted and Laura screamed. And the next thing she knew, she was trying to hug a jumping, panting, struggling, wriggling Jack, who lapped her face and hands with his warm, wet tongue. She couldn't hold him. He leaped and wriggled from her to Pa to Ma and back to her again. "Well, I'm beat," Pa said. "So am I," said Ma, "but did you have to wake the baby?" She rocked Carrie in her arms, hushing her. Jack was perfectly well, but soon he lay down close to Laura and sighed a long sigh. His eyes were red with tiredness, and all the under part of him was caked with mud. Ma gave him a cornmeal cake, and he licked it and wagged it politely, but he could not eat. He was too tired. No telling how long he kept swimming, Pa said, nor how far he was carried downstream before he landed. And when at last he reached them, Laura called him a wolf, and Pa threatened to shoot him. But Jack knew they didn't mean it. Laura asked him, "You knew we didn't mean it, didn't you, Jack?" Jack wagged his stump of a tail. He knew. It was past bedtime. Pa chained Pet and Patty to the feed box at the back of the wagon and fed them their corn. Carrie slept again, and Ma helped Mary and Laura undress. She put their long nightgowns over their heads while they stuck their arms into the sleeves. They buttoned the neckbands themselves and tied the strings of their nightcaps beneath their chins. Under the wagon, Jack wearily turned around 3 times and lay down to sleep. In the wagon, Laura and Mary said their prayers and crawled into their little bed. Ma kissed them good night. On the other side of the canvas, Pet and Patty were eating their corn. When Patty whooshed into the feed box, the whoosh was right at Laura's ear. There were little scurrying sounds in the grass. In the trees by the creek, an owl called, "Hoo! Hoo!" Farther away, another owl answered, "Ooh! Ooh!" Far away on the prairie, the wolves howled, and under the wagon, Jack growled low in his chest. In the wagon, everything was safe and snug. Thickly in front of the open wagon top hung the large glittering stars. Pa could reach them, Laura thought. She wished he would pick the largest one from the thread on which it hung from the sky and give it to her. She was wide awake. She was not sleepy at all, but suddenly she was very much surprised. The large star winked at her. Then she was waking up the next morning. The end of chapter 3. So our word stealthy came in the chapter when it was talking about how the wind moved through the grass. So that doesn't give us a really good definition of stealthy in that description. The word isn't used later in the chapter, but it was better described with the way Jack was moving in the grass. It said he was low to the ground and he was moving slowly through the grass. And that is a better way to describe the word stealthy, to move slowly and low to the ground. So here's the definition as it was used in our book. Moving slowly while crouching low to the ground. Moving slowly while crouching low to the ground. So you need to copy that. You can pause the video, or if you already got it written down, that's fine. But on the underneath here or on the back where it says stealthy, right there, you can write the definition, and then you'll turn that in when we get all 10, the first 10 chapters done, which won't be for a while. All right, then to that activity I talked about earlier for your trifold. So what you need to do is to pretend that you were Ma, or pretend that you were Mary, and this, not Mary, because I think she would be hard. I'm sorry, Laura. Or pretend that you were Pa. You might even be able to pretend you were Jack. And put yourself in their place and see what's happening in the chapter through their eyes. And think about, what was Laura thinking or feeling as surprising things happened in the chapter. The big surprise was that Jack came back. So if you can think about what did Ma do during that time? What did she say? How was she feeling? What did Pa do? How was he thinking and feeling? Or what was Laura thinking? Or maybe even what was Jack thinking while he was coming towards them and they pointed a gun at him and called him a wolf and all of the things that had happened to him. And you're going to write a diary entry as if you were that person. So you're going to use words like I and me, because you are putting yourself in that place and pretending to be them while you write it. It's always fun to hear you make dialogue. What would they say in their thoughts, or what were they thinking? So you want to use I, if you're going to be Laura, I saw this. Or I thought, oh, Jack was a wolf. How sad, how bad that was of me, or something like that. And then you're going to read it to me on the audio part of the seesaw. Not video, but just audio. All right. See you next time.